When I was a little boy, I was very concerned about order and predictability. Heading off to preschool was tough for me. There were so many unknowns. New classmates, a new school building. I begged and begged and begged my mom to become a classroom aide. She gave in, and I made it through preschool unharmed. But more challenges followed. Clothing was always a serious matter. My get-up needed to be clean and well-ironed and sharp, yet durable and sporty enough for dodgeball at recess. And lunches, no way was I going to eat that disgusting calf food, so my mom packed one for me every day. I insisted upon leaving home every morning clutching that brown bag because I learned my lesson early. One time, my loving but occasionally forgetful mother didn't have my lunch ready when I left for school. She said she'd deliver it to my locker in time, but that morning, I checked and checked and checked, but there was nothing there. By noon, I was in line, ready to become another victim to Mr. McRib in a bun. At the last second, my mom appeared, lunch in hand, and I collapsed in her arms, overflowing with furious, shocked tears. With this disposition, I was also bothered by the unpredictability and the twists and turns of Palm Sunday and the Passion Week. I remember my first go-through. I dutifully celebrated the procession of the palms, much like the bright-eyed youngsters that fill our sanctuary today. But in a few days came the horror of Maundy Thursday and Good Friday. What were we celebrating last Sunday? I wondered. Didn't people know this was coming? Of course, it was Easter in a few days, and fortunes changed. But by then, I was just too exhausted. I resolved to go through the Passion the following years, appropriately detached and calm. My evaluation of the liturgy as an 8-year-old was that everyone needed to be a little less enthusiastic on Palm Sunday, a little less sorrowful on Maundy Thursday and Good Friday, and a little less euphoric on Easter Sunday. I'm older now, but I still cope with Passion Week the same way. In my familiarity, I detach. I overlook the deepest sorrows and the greatest joys. Maybe, like me, you've also just been through the services too many times, or you just get too exhausted by all the events. The Passion Week is difficult. For one, it's filled with such big events. The Palm Procession, the Lord's Supper, Jesus washing the disciples' feet, Jesus before Pontius Pilate. You just don't have time to ponder them all and make sense. They kind of fall by the wayside in the midst of the crucifixion and the resurrection. Another reason that this is a difficult week is that the narrative of these events is jarring, even senseless. One week, crowds praise Jesus with palms. The next week, crowds sentence him to death. How can we make sense of that bizarre and awful plotline? Or maybe the most practical reason the Passion Week is difficult is that it's just so easy to miss. If you continue with your regular Sunday church going and don't detour into the darkness of Thursday and Friday, you can skip straight from sunny Palm Sunday to the blinding brightness of Easter morning. All these reasons make the Passion Week a difficult journey, but this week is the centerpiece of our Christian faith, and there's just no getting around it. We've got to jump into the Passion Week and experience its peaks and valleys. Today's lectionary reminds us that though the Passion is only 1 week in our liturgical calendar, its message resonates throughout Scripture. The prophet Isaiah though he may have the tongue of a teacher, is spat upon, persecuted, rejected, afflicted. The psalmist is even more woeful, stuck in utter despair, his body wasting away, afflicted. And Paul's letter to the Philippians spells out the unglamorous side of being the Christ. Humbled before everyone, emptied, afflicted. The tension outlined in these passages culminates in this week, the Passion Week, where lightness and darkness collide like ominous storm clouds in an afternoon sky. This tension, this duality of lightness and darkness encapsulates the Christian message. We are stuck in sin and forsakenness, and we yearn, we know that it may be otherwise. We commemorate Good Friday and Easter Sunday this week, but in reality, we live between them every day, between lightness and darkness, hurting but hoping. The Passion Week forces us to look at the precariousness of our situation. It forces us into vulnerability, because in the Passion Week, God is vulnerable here. There's no room this week for the Jesus that dominates popular piety, the mighty Jesus, the glowing Jesus, the Jesus that walks on water and surmounts 10-ton tombstones. No, this week we're stuck with a bleeding Jesus, a pleading Jesus, a forsaken Jesus, an afflicted Jesus, a Jesus that looks an awful lot like you and me. This type of Jesus doesn't fill sanctuaries or offering plates because he's unsightly and weak. We don't preach this Jesus much, but we're stuck with him. This week, obviously, but truly as the content of our faith. The Passion Week forces all this upon us, this darkness, this hopelessness, and we need to jump in to make proper sense of it. That's how it ought to be. We ought to jump in. But for me, and maybe for you too, I go through the Passion Week differently. I go through the Passion Week dispassionately, detached, familiar. Like my 8-year-old self, I turn away from its peaks and valleys. I'm careful not to become too joyful or too sorrowful. It's ho-hum for me. Been there, done that.